When we're saying don't conflate your roles, we're not saying don't be all of those things.
Right, no.
We're saying integrate them in a way that creates this holistic relationship that's healthy. Jesus did that in that he, even though he became all of these things, right? A teacher, a friend, he's Lord. Never did he lose the fact that those were all through the lens of being Savior.
Yeah, right.
Right.
I mean,
so integration without conflation is what our goal should be.
What's up, friends? Welcome to another episode of the Futures Here podcast. I'm here, of course, with Robert Aboides.
What's up?
And we are here to help you have the leadership principles that you need to lead for this next generation. Last time we talked about, we had a two-part series.
Yeah, we did.
Leading through crisis.
It was good.
Yeah,
if I do say so myself.
I thought it was good. I thought we led that podcast well.
Yes.
But today, what we're going to be talking about is a word that actually doesn't get used a lot.
Most people probably don't know what it means.
Don't even know it. We're going to talk about conflation, friends. Conflation.
Not inflation. Conflation.
No inflation. We're all worried.
Everybody's talking about it, but no one's talking about the problem of conflation.
Yes. So conflation, we had another title for this is Who Am I to You?
Yeah. Who am I to you, Tommy?
Who am I to you? And here's actually the conflation part. Robert, to me, he's a coworker. He's a leader. He's a mentor. He's a friend. You're a lot of different things in my life.
Yeah. Same here.
Right. So conflation, explain it.
Yeah, the idea of conflation is when you mix a bunch of things together that should actually stay separate. So that, in a nutshell, is what it is. And a lot of times as leaders, I think this is especially true in the church, if I'm honest, is there's a lot of conflation internally, maybe not necessarily with the congregation, but certainly internally with staff. But it happens in nonprofits as well. I've actually seen it in business as well. Back in my corporate days, saw a lot of this where leaders were conflating all of these different roles together into one. And there's a lot of challenges with that.
Yeah, there's a ton.
There's a lot of challenges with that.
And I think where it gets really difficult in our context is because we all follow Jesus and we have this spiritual language, you have this language from the Bible, we have language like, we love each other and we're family and you're my pastor. And so all that gets conflated. Then when you're running an institution, a church, a nonprofit, a business, and it gets confusing and relationships get broken up because of conflation when we didn't understand, hey, I want to make it really clear to you who's speaking, who am I to you right now in this moment, in this conversation, in the context and situation we find ourselves in. And so give us really quickly, give us an example of what this looks like.
Well, I'm going to give you
this all the time.
I'm going to give you a hypothetical. Okay.
Yeah.
It's hypothetical. This is not a real scenario, folks. Hypothetical. It's got, I think, help us understand this issue of conflation. So there's a pastor in the church. Let's call him Levi. Okay. Levi,
you know who you are.
Levi's mentoring. You're going to get us in trouble.
Yeah.
This is hypothetical. So there's this pastor in the church, we'll call him Levi, and he's mentoring a young leader. Let's call him Joseph. Okay. Now, their relationship primarily has been that of pastor and congregant. He's a congregant in this pastor's church, right? But over time, Joseph kind of becomes part of the church ministry team. He starts to get more involved. He starts to get closer to the pastor, which meant eventually then what happens is when Joseph joins the team, Levi now is not just his pastor, he's now his supervisor.
Right.
As well.
So we got a boss.
So we got a boss and a pastor. Now, as they're working closer together, Levi and Joseph developed this friendship due to similar interests. They love food and theology, both of them. And so they spend a lot of time together, hanging out, talking food, eating food and talking theology, right? Or eating theology and talking food. I almost said that.
You do both.
You could do both, yeah. Jesus said, I'm the bread of life, so... But here's the thing. Everything seemed fine between Levi and Joseph until this difficult situation arose where Joseph wasn't quite meeting the expectations in his ministry role. All right. So Levi says, okay, I got to have this crucial conversation with Joseph about his performance. So Levi goes in, tells Joseph, what's the deal, right? Joseph doesn't react the way Levi expected. Joseph actually feels betrayed by his friend and pastor, but Levi is feeling frustrated as his boss because the conversation didn't go well. Now, Joseph eventually ends up stepping down from this ministry and eventually actually ends up leaving the church. Now, here's what I'm wondering. How many of our listeners can actually relate to this situation on either side of the equation?
Right. Yes.
And if you can relate, actually, we'd love to hear from you. Put it down in the comments on this video because we'd love to hear what your conflation situation is.
But use real names and church names. We want all the chisme. You know what I mean? So just like.
But here's the thing.
Conflation.
It truly is a hypothetical situation.
Yeah.
But it happens way more than we might think. We see this all of the time.
All the time. And it's very difficult, again, in our context because of the language we use, the boundaries that we don't set up. In fact, I've seen a lot of leaders, I've seen leaders on both sides of this use conflation as, like they use it as a benefit to them. Have you seen that?
Say more about that. No.
So what I mean by that is because I'm really unclear about the relationship, I can manipulate you.
Oh, interesting.
Right? Because I, as a leader, can be like, man, I thought we were friends, bro. Why didn't you show up? And you're like, sorry, pastor.
Yeah.
Well, are you my boss? Are you? And you're going to have a lot more issues with this because the generations coming up are much more clear about, they're aware of these things a lot more.
Yeah.
You can also take advantage of it, coming up where you're like, well, I thought you were my friend. You can make the leader feel bad. Like, oh man, I can't really fire them. I can't put them on, even though I'm their boss and I pay them. Well, because man, I'm their pastor so it goes the other way too, where it's like you will deal with foolishness that is messing up things in your workspace or what God's called you to, because the leaders conflate, like they don't know how to deal with it.
Well, that's a great transition. Let's talk about what the dangers are of conflation, especially in leadership, right? Yeah. So I think the first thing you kind of touched upon that is when we conflate our roles with people and when people are not clear about them, it actually distorts our decision making. Yeah. Because what happens is it does, as you explained just now, it leads to biased decisions, right? I might show favoritism or I might avoid confrontation. Like, I can't speak to them about that because we're buds and I can't really talk to them like that. And so you end up avoiding dealing with a situation that actually has to happen. So we avoid hard conversations in order to keep the friendship, to preserve the friendship. The friendship becomes more important than the working relationship or even the spiritual relationship that's there. Yeah.
And I mean, I was just reading something before this about spiritual, emotional, sexual abuse of a leader, pretty large leader over this organization. And when you're not clear about the when you're not clear about the relationship, it can get taken advantage of. Yeah. And the distorted decision making, like it can lead you to paths that you never wanted to go, right? Like, and so this is really important for leaders to understand. And so because of that kind of distorted decision making, it can also kind of lead us to number 2 is damaged relationships, right? So people can experience confusion from leaders when they switch roles without clarity. And that's where like the gaslighting comes from. That's where the manipulation comes from. That's where have you ever left a conversation thoroughly confused about what just transpired? Yeah. Conflation. I feel like that's what happened in that. It wasn't clear. And so you leave and you just feel uneasy because there's no clarity about what just happened. You just got yelled at or you got manipulated or you just feel kind of gross from that interaction. It's probably because of this.
But an hour ago, you were having lunch together and everything was cool.
Yeah. And then, shoot, tomorrow, you get approached that way, and so you're confused. You're like,
it's emotional whiplash, man.
Are we friends? Am I your, and then you start to feel a certain way. So then you start behaving, and then it just starts damaging those relationships, and you see a lot of people leave. And then, unfortunately, I think people will place that onto Christ. Like, oh man, like Christians, or like, Jesus ain't real, like all this stuff, like it leads them away from God. And there's, Jesus talks really harshly about what happens when the way that we behave produces that. And
that damages relational capital, right? Relational trust.
Yeah.
And so even if it can damage not just your emotional being, but again, your spiritual being as well, right?
Absolutely.
That you feel like, oh man, I got like hurt by the church because you expected, and the church was acting like it was something that it really was never meant to be.
Right.
But because it was acting that way with you, and then it all of a sudden hurt you, you're like, oh my goodness, what happened?
Yeah.
And you experience all of this hurt about it.
And I do love your phrase, emotional whiplash, because I think a lot of people experience that.
Yeah.
And we don't have to. There's a way to do this that doesn't produce that. Lastly, on the dangers of conflation in leadership is leadership blind spots. When you can't grow as a leader and you're not helping lead other people because you've conflated the whole situation. And so then it's just confusing for everybody, and you have these huge blind spots, and then everybody's getting surprised all the time. Like, I will tell you this, real practical leadership, don't surprise people. Like, don't.
They shouldn't be surprised.
They shouldn't be surprised by a hard conversation, by a decision, those kind of things. It's the worst to surprise people. You always want to give people a heads up. They know and there's ways to do that. We should probably do a whole podcast on that. But those leadership blind spots, and then also when you create that, you create an unsafe environment for then people to speak truth into your life.
That's
as
huge.
A leader.
Yeah.
Like, hey, how you treated that person wasn't right. Hey, shoot, this thing I just read about. Hey, you seem to be giving special favor to them.
Yeah.
Is your marriage okay? Are you that? Hey, that seemed really weird that you only take that young intern out to lunch all the time. Like, right?
Yeah.
But then if I have this conflation, then I can switch it on you and be like, nah, how dare you? I'm the Lord's chosen. You know what I mean? Or whatever it is. Like, it gets really weird. And then you can't receive that. And that's a dangerous place to be.
Yeah. So. Or even creating, the bro culture. I mean, just to be honest, some misogyny, right? The bro culture in our churches or whatever, like, oh, the pastor will hang out with the guys and take the guys out and hang out, and they do that, but then, the women don't get equal time. Not that they should be hanging out in that way, just saying that it creates confusion for the others who are not part of that circle.
Right.
Like, oh, wait, so
I guess
they're friends and family and boss, but I'm just like an employee. Like, right. It's so much confusion. It gets disconnected from the values that we're actually trying to create and the culture that we want in these spaces. Yeah. So when we do that, here's how you maintain that relational leadership, because this is what makes it hard. We want to be relational. Absolutely.
We want to be like, even with my kids, like, I want to be the cool dad, but I don't want to be so cool that I'm just letting you ruin your life, right? Like, the value here isn't that your friends think I'm cool or that I'm the cool dad. My value is to raise you right. Like, so, right. Yeah. And that's where it gets,
That's a perfect example of conflation with parents and children, right? A lot of times we have parents who, they want to be their children's friends. They want to be their confidant. Oh, tell me what's happening. It's, like, you get literally, I've seen parents get into the chisme of their kids, stuff. And all of a sudden they become like, they start criticizing their friends along with them. Like, are you the parent or the friend right now? Like, what is going on?
It's a real thing.
And confuses the heck out of your kids for sure.
Yeah. Cause then when you come down on them, they're just like, I thought we were homies. Like, what's your problem?
Yeah.
So, okay, so there is a way to maintain relational leadership without losing that clarity or that clear boundaries of roles, you know? And so we don't, what we're saying is we don't abandon relational leadership. So we don't make it such a hard line where it's like, please don't tell me any of your, I don't care about you as a person. I only care about you as a worker. That's not what we're saying. So the solution to this, right, is really intentional, and we know this in the urban space of like code switching, but what we're saying is
not code switching.
It's not code switching. It's intentional role switching.
Yeah.
In this. And so help us understand that. And then we actually have 7 essentials for relational clarity that we'll walk you through.
Yeah. I mean, I think being really intentional about your role switching, like saying that part out loud when you're having a conversation, especially if you're having a difficult conversation, right? A fierce conversation, let's call it. Mm-hmm. I think what's really important is that you clarify who is speaking at the moment. So Tommy, if I'm all of these different things to you, you know, I might come to you and say, hey, Tommy, can we talk? I have an issue that I want to discuss with you, but this is an employee issue. Yeah. And I need to talk to you as my boss right now.
Yeah.
Just being really clear about that. So it literally will switch your mindset to like, oh, okay, we're going to talk about professional stuff here.
Yeah, we're here.
Right? We're here right now. Or I'm like, hey, Tommy, can I, because I've done this before. Hey, Tommy, bro, can I just talk to you as a friend, man? I have, and you know, and again, you're being really clear about what role am I playing right now? And so it helps the person that you're speaking to not confuse who they're actually speaking to. And believe it or not, that actually preserves the other roles that you're playing in their life, because they're not going to conflate it. But if you don't say it, they're hearing something and they're going, wait, is this my boss? Is this like, who's talking to me right now? So got to be really intentional about role switching.
So in that, on a real practical note, when you're having that conversation, I do this all the time, because here's not what we're not saying. We're not saying that those different roles don't play into each other.
Sure.
That happens. I mean, the reality that if we're friends, but I'm also someone's boss, like that's a reality that we have to, that means as your boss, I know things about you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I might know, man, you're struggling in your marriage right now, and that's affecting your work here. So I don't just ignore that either, right? And this is where it gets really difficult. So in the conversation, as I think about through the conversation, I will break up and have some of those boundaries, and then we can talk about that in those spaces. So I might say something like, hey, so as your boss, I'm having a hard time understanding why this isn't happening. As your friend, I also know what's going on at home. Do you feel like that's really affecting this area over here? So then you can follow with me and be like, yeah, it really is. Okay. So I can receive the wholeness of who you are, and then you and I together, this is where fierce conversations come in. Mm-hmm. You and I together can stand together and look at the problem totally.
Yeah.
But that's because as my friend, we have led each other into those spaces. Well, I care for you as the whole person, but we have to look at it this way. Now, if I don't have that relation with you, then I'm not bringing those things up. I'm not like, I don't know, I saw you and your wife the other day at such and such. It looked like you were arguing. Is that the problem? I don't.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
you don't have the right to bring those things up.
Right, because I haven't earned that. So that's where it gets really difficult. But in those conversations, I make it clear. Yeah. And even when we're trying to come to a consensus about something, you and I are together on this when we're looking at the problem. You are not the problem, but we're looking at, like, your work here is really suffering. What's going on?
Yeah.
And then you as the person can share, hey, on a personal level, here's what's going on. And I think it's affecting me here at work. And then you can work through the responsibility of who needs to do what. Like, I'll say a lot here, look, I'm not trying to control your life. You're a full-grown adult, but here's the problem we're running into. So how can I support in that? Then that person can invite me in on the different areas that we have.
Well, I'm so glad you gave that example, because we don't just role switch necessarily once in the conversation.
No,
sometimes you might switch back and forth, but again, what's important is to clarify that switch, right?
Yeah.
So people don't know who you're talking as, and it's reciprocal. If I'm me as a leader, if I'm talking to my leader,
Yeah.
I also want to be able to like, okay, well, hey, here's a personal level. Let me share what's with you, but professionally, this is what I'm seeing. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
both can do the role switching effectively, and man, I'm telling you, it preserves the sanctity of the overall relationship
Yeah.
when you're able to do that well. I know not to over spiritualize it, but Ecclesiastes 3:1, it says there's a time for everything. Well, there is a time for you to be a boss. There's a time for you to be a pastor. There's a time for you to be a friend. There's a time for you to just be a peer or a listening ear or whatever the case may be. So you have to know and discern what are the right times to do those things.
And you have to practice that because it's a practice.
It
thing.
is.
But
It
I will
is.
tell you, if you're a leader and you're trying to practice and implement this, you'll be much better than someone who just doesn't and conflates everything. And because it will eventually it'll be toxic. It'll turn into gaslighting and manipulation. It's too easy if you're not aware of it and pressing into it. So,
Well, here's what I believe is going to happen.
Yeah.
I really believe as a result of this conversation, if you've never heard that word before, conflation, I
You'll
think
start to see
you're
it.
going to start to see it now. You're going to be like, oh, that's conflation right there. You're conflating because it's everywhere and you just don't really pay attention to it.
So if you're under a leader and that's happening, one thing you can do is just go, "Hey, I'm sorry. Can we just make it clear? Can we just talk about it on a work side and then talk about our friendship or that you're my pastor on?" Like, I think you can also lead up in that way. Difficult but that'll help that leader understand, like, hey, it's hard for me to understand what's happening here. Are
Yeah.
you talking to me as my friend right now? Or are you talking to me as my boss? So you can also, lead in that way.
So here's before we go into the
Yeah.
this is really important. Here's a big danger again for us as leaders. You have to make sure you role switch in a way that you're not using that switch against somebody.
Yeah, that's good.
So, for example, if I'm your boss and your pastor, I shouldn't say, "Hey, as your pastor, you need to work better." You know what I mean? Like I'm giving my spiritual authority over you for a professional issue.
That's conflating the conflation.
That's like
You're doubling up.
double
on it.
conflation. Like you're using that role that you play against that individual. Be like, no, because here's the reality of it. As a pastor, if you set yourself up that way, they might feel like a certain level of honor and respect to be like, well, I can't speak back or up against my pastor.
Right.
But as a boss, they have the right to challenge you.
Yeah, totally.
They have the right to say like, well, no, that's not how I see it, or well, you haven't provided this, and so you give them permission actually to challenge you if you're saying I'm speaking to you as your boss, versus if it's a professional situation and you're saying, hey, as your pastor, like, that's not fair.
That's where it gets messy. And so we have 7 essentials for relational clarity.
Yes, we do.
Number 1, we practice radical self-awareness.
Yes.
This is kind of just what we hope all leaders do all the time. You just please be aware of
Goodness.
And this is hard. Can I just point out, this is hard. I remember being a leader, the way that you see yourself. I want to be humble. I work at humility. And there were times when I didn't realize just my title. I've had leaders say but you're Tommy Nixon. And I'm like, what does that mean? What does that mean? Because I don't walk around being like, yeah, I'm Tommy Nixon. I don't know what that means to you. I had to be self-aware, and I wasn't. When I walk in a situation, if somebody understands me as pastor, or this one was hard, as father, there were times when I had to go to them and go, hey, I'm not trying to be your dad. I know you need a dad. I know you need a father figure.
Good.
There were others that I had taken on that responsibility. I'm like a father figure in your world. And there were times I had to say sorry for that because I didn't fulfill it well.
Yeah.
And mostly it's like I have 5 kids and I'm like, I don't have much. I can't be your dad. So that clarity can help a lot of relationships. So
I feel like every leadership principle that we espouse starts with radical
Oh my
self-awareness.
gosh, please. Like, do the work to be like, why do I think like that? Why do I act like that? Why does that person bother me? Why? Like, you have to be aware in that. So always regularly ask, which role am I in at this moment in this conversation with this person? Have I made this clear?
Yeah.
And for some of it, because we're so relational in the kingdom of God, going like, just asking somebody, hey, do you see me as a mentor? Hey, you said this the other day. You introduced me as this. I don't really see myself as that. Is that what your expectations are? So having the expectation conversation is really helpful to understand the unspoken roles that you may carry for people.
Yeah.
I realized in the neighborhoods when I was doing that work, if I came to you and I said, hey, I'm Pastor Tommy, that came with a whole bunch of expectations that I didn't necessarily want. Am I a pastor? Yes. Am I your pastor? I don't know. We have to have those conversations.
Yeah.
So
the first one, practice radical self-awareness. The second one is establish clear role definitions. Now, what we mean by that is have explicit conversations about expectations, about boundaries.
have a job description.
About let's start there.
Yeah.
Right? About context with those you lead. Like, don't assume that people understand what hat you're wearing.
Yeah.
Right. Or even what hats you want to wear. As you're explaining, right? Sometimes people will put hats on you that you're like,
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I don't
When
wear
I'm
those kind of hats. Like,
That's
sorry.
not me. I didn't sign up for that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So practice radical self-awareness, establish clear role definitions. The third one is just honor context.
Yeah.
Because I think different settings call for different leadership approaches, right? So the perfect one is like a staff meeting requires a different kind of leadership posture than a pastoral counseling session.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
That's great.
Or a hangout, if we're just hanging out. So you have to honor the context. Can I be really casual here?
Yes.
Can I joke around? Can I cap on people in this meeting? Or I know you cross those boundaries often, Tommy.
Yeah, I do.
But I think we need to be intentional about matching our role to the context.
So as a leader, what's important about this is naming it. And if you can get into the practice of level setting when you move into a new situation. Hey, guys, we're not going to talk business. We're just here to hang out. What I want from this lunch is for us just to connect and you let loose a little bit. And I just want the relationship. Just name it. Like, be intentional about everything. Hey, guys, right now what we're going to do is we're going to get through these 3 things. Then we're going to have lunch and we're just going to relax. Afternoon, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
You set the tone. And the more you can be explicit about that, what you want, level set in that. Hey, we need to have some hard conversations today about where we're heading. And so if you can get into that, that really helps. Number 4, practice fierce conversations. There is a book, by the way, called Fierce Conversations, conflict resolution book. I love that book. There's others out there that are great as well. Whatever it is, if you have an understanding of that fierce conversations, then you name your role at the start of those difficult conversations to avoid conversation. Because when there is conflation within the relationship, just go, hey, today we have to do a review of as an employee at this place.
Yeah.
So they know what they're coming into. Again, don't surprise people. But as you practice fierce conversations, again, a principle in that is you're standing side by side and you're digging for the truth together to discover the problem, and then I might be saying, here's the problem I see. Is that the problem that you see? You speak into it. We define the problem, and then we can work on it.
That's good.
But that's really hard to do when I'm conflating the role. So I'll give you an example. Hey, your performance in your job's you said you would reach these 4 things. You've only reached 1. We're at the end of the year. That's a problem. If I then bring up, though, the problem is that I don't think you're spending enough time with Jesus, Right? I mean, and that sounds dumb, but I've seen people do that where they're just like, I just feel like you're waning. Like, where are you at with God? And you're like, wait, what? Like, okay, I mean, that makes it really confusing. So as a pastor, a spiritual person in my life, you're saying that it's my spiritual depth that's the problem, and that's not why I'm not we haven't defined what the problem is, and so my role in that's really important. So
and I think that, we say it all the time. Clarity is kindness.
Clarity is kindness,
right? So sometimes you have to work together to find that clarity, right? To discover that clarity. And here's the thing about it: hard conversations, fierce conversations, whatever you want to call them. And especially role switching. Role switching is going to feel very uncomfortable at first.
Oh yeah,
it's going to feel awkward to be like, oh, I have to tell you that I'm, you know what I mean? And so, but again, it's like you said earlier, Tommy, it's something you have to practice. You have to put into practice to be really clear. Now, it doesn't mean that in the course of a conversation, just a general conversation, you're like, hey, Tommy, I'm talking to you as your boss right now. Hey, now I'm your friend. Hey, now I'm your pastor. Hey, now I'm, no, that's not what we're talking about.
Eventually what happens, friends, as you practice this, it creates an atmosphere that's safe.
Yeah.
And you can flow in and out of these in a much better way. But what we're trying to set out for you right now is to build a culture like that at your place of leadership.
Yeah.
And then it can be understood. But I'm always also asking, because I flow in and out of that, I'm always coming back and going, hey, if I offended you, I need to know. And so there's a safe place for somebody to come to me like, hey man, I felt like that was unfair, or I'm confused about what happened. Great, I can receive that, and then we can fierce conversation, and it's there. Next, create boundaries. That's important. This is important in Christian spaces. Yeah,
and I think the kind of boundaries we're talking about are kind of contextual boundaries, right? So, for example, if we're here at work, obviously everybody that I work with, I consider my friends.
Yeah.
Right? I really do, deeply. But I'm not just going to go around all day being a friend to everybody. We're just being friendly and not getting any work done, right? So I do have to limit how many times or how I'm actually playing loosely with that. So, for example, here we do. I love that. A lot of us often get together for lunch and just hang out and have these deep conversations. That's all friendship time. There's no expectation of any of us that we're going to talk work or something I'm going to say I'm worried about that you're going to use against me, because that's a huge thing, right? Yeah. And so it's important to create these contextual boundaries where okay, I can be this in this situation, but I can't really be that in this other situation. Yeah.
And what we're telling you is it's hard, and you'll make mistakes. Absolutely. And you just keep on working on it. It creates a good, healthy culture in your space. So next, establish accountability structures, right? You want feedback loops that help you understand what's being conflated, and what's not. We've experienced that here with people who work here that were offended or didn't understand they were coming from a certain culture to this culture. Yeah. And they were like, this was really hard. I thought it was going to be this, and it wasn't. We were able to take that, hear that criticism. We talked about that last time. Hear the criticism, receive it, and change some things so that we can stop that conflation, whether it's here or was brought in. And so we dealt with that so we could hear that. So you want to establish accountability structures so that you can hear that, see that, and you want to create a safe place for people to bring it up. We do, because we're urban. That's our culture here too. We make fun of things, and that's how I connect personally with people. If I'm not making fun or we're not laughing, I don't really rock with you. So there it is. It's just there's not that connection. But sometimes I mess up on that, and I need the accountability to be like, man, Tommy, man, that was harsh, bro. That was out of pocket. Then I can say, I can make it right. I'm sorry. Last is you want to revisit your theology of leadership.
Big one. Yeah. So I think when we look at the role that Jesus played, obviously he's, Savior, King, right?
Yeah,
he has all these
I no longer
roles.
call you servants.
I know, right? I call you friends, right? Yeah. So he switched right? He basically said, hey, I'm switching roles here because now I'm actually going to treat you more like friends, right? But here's the thing about Jesus. He didn't stop being those things, right? He integrated them into a whole of the relationship. So conflation doesn't mean, or sorry, when we're saying don't conflate your roles, we're not saying don't be all of those things.
Right, no.
We're saying integrate them in a way that creates this holistic relationship that's healthy, where we can switch between these different roles, right? And so we are always going to be primarily one thing to somebody.
Yes.
I have people in my life that no matter what, even though I consider them friends, they still call me pastor.
Right?
Yeah.
Hey, Pastor Robert, like, oh, okay.
But and it's so in those situations, what I take from that is that's the most comfortable relationship for them. Yeah. And so rather than me go be like, you know what, I'm just going to be your friend. Like, I honor that for them.
That's like, I need to hear that.
Because
that's good.
Because that's how they see me. I can't just like dismiss that and break down their, whatever structures they have, however this relationship helps them, then I want to honor that, right? And I think Jesus did that in that even though he became all of these things, right? A teacher, a friend, he's Lord, never did he lose the fact that those were all through the lens of being Savior.
Yeah, right.
I mean, so integration without conflation is what our goal should be.
Yeah, I love you. You had this phrase like coherence, not confusion. That's actually what we want. We like, oh, it's understood.
Yeah.
And that's part of building the culture. And that's why we wanted to get into this. And so a couple things to wrap up, reflection questions for you guys. Where are you currently experiencing role conflation? Like, think through it and be like, oh, I think that's what that is. Name
Especially now that you know the word.
Yeah, hey, there it is. Second, what conversation are you avoiding because of unclear roles? Have the conversation, right? And third, what step can you take this week toward greater clarity as a leader and just
take action? Yeah,
and for a lot of us, can I just say, go say sorry?
Yeah,
just go. Hey, I think I've done this. I just heard this podcast. Stupid Robert and Tommy messing up my life with big words.
Go humble thyself.
Yeah, and just go, man. I think I've done that with you, and I just want to apologize. I want to be better at that. I will tell you right now, that'll bring a whole bunch of healing. They'll be more willing to be like, yeah, it's been hard for me. Okay, cool. I just want to work on being really clear about who's talking when. So we hope that's been really helpful for you as you've learned new words and new ways to do things to be the leader that God created you to be as you lead this next generation. It's always good being with you guys, and we'll see you guys next time on the Futures Here podcast.